Dear colleagues, we are glad to welcome you at the Foreign Ministry Press Center at the briefing of Ambassador-at-Large on Crimes of the Kiev Regime, Rodion Miroshnik. During today's event, we will present a report on criminal actions of Kiev regime during the first quarter of 2025. After the introductory statement of Rodion Miroshnik, you will have an opportunity to ask your questions. Please adhere to the theme of the today briefing. Our today event is online and broadcast at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Digital Resources and interpreted into English and French. Mr. Miroshnik, you have the floor. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long time since our previous meeting, and I would like to convey to you the information of interest on our Secretariat and provided by our colleagues as well. Today we present a report on violation of international norms and principles of international humanitarian law committed on Russian frontline territories during the period from the 1st of January till the 31st of March 2025. The data has been collected thanks to our cooperation with the relevant federal authorities and local administrations in the frontline hostilities territories. The data has been verified thanks to my business trips to the frontline zones, territories, Belgorod region, Donetsk and Lugansk regions. Our conclusions are based on testimonies by victims and witnesses of crimes of Ukrainians neo-Nazis. Crimes of Ukrainian militants against civilians have been committed as part of concerted state policy of the Kiev regime, aimed at attacking civilian population of Russian regions. The criminal strategy of Zelensky regime is a desire to sow panic among local civilian population. It is a desire to undermine Russia from within. That's how Kiev explains its criminal actions and terrorist methods against civilians and killing of innocent citizens. Such an approach by the Kiev regime is implemented through direct orders of Ukrainian army headquarters to its militants. I quote, "Shoot at all the civilians you will meet." It is a tacit approval by Western handlers and their impunity. They think they will not be punished for their crimes. It is the basis of inhumane policy of Zelensky, his entourage, and his sponsors abroad. During this period, Russian civilian sites have been attacked by the Ukrainian army. It has been at least 22,221 munitions. And from February 2022, it has been not less than 251,865 munitions of different calibers and modifications. The growth in crimes is directly linked with the policy of Zelensky and his handlers, his reaction to international events. It underlines the international character of crimes against civilians residing on those territories. The sharp increase in the number of Ukrainian shellings has been noted in the last weeks of March. It has been the reaction to negotiations between Moscow and Washington. The incoming strikes have reached 300 a day. It is more than 2,000 a week. Most frequently, sites have been attacked in Belgorod, Donetsk, Kherson, Kursk, Zaporozhye, and Lugansk regions. During the period since the 1st of January up to 31st of March, the actions of the Ukrainian army caused casualties among at least 1,489 civilians. 1,197 people were wounded, 292 were killed. 68 children suffered and 5 will remain children forever. They have been killed. According to our data, 14,287 people have been wounded. 6,715 people were killed, of which 218 minors. Since the date of telephone conversation between Putin and Trump, the number of casualties grew by at least a third. More than 150 civilians suffered every week. The biggest number of casualties is in the Donetsk People's Republic. 429 civilians were wounded, 30 minors, 70 people were killed. In Kursk region, it's without taking into account those civilians who suffered on the territories controlled by the Ukrainian army. It is 375 casualties, of which 260 wounded, 9 children, and 115 people killed. In Belgorod region, 169 casualties, of which 21 killed and 2 children. In the Lugansk People's Republic, 97 civilians suffered, of which 80 wounded, 2 children, and 17 civilians killed. The statistical data collected by us still does not include the shootings, killings, and torture of the Kursk region civilians. Now that the liberation of our territory from Ukrainian punishers and militants is finished, the investigative activities will be accelerated. In such villages as Nikolaevo, Darina, Plokhovo, Guevo in the Kursk region, only a half of civilians who were unable to evacuate lived to the liberation of the region. The investigative committee of Russia has already collected the testimonies of civilians who have survived the control of Nazis over their territories. Many civilians were buried in vegetable gardens, courtyards, and in graves. These investigations will be published and the world will receive the accurate data on crimes of Ukrainian Nazis in the Kursk region. We now have the information of the killings of civilians in Ruskaya Porечная, Malaya Lokhnya, Cherkasskaya Porечная, Makhnovka, and other villages in the Kursk region. The Ukrainian militants who were prisoners of war, prisoners of war of Ukrainian militants, they have already provided their testimonies. Their orders not to spare civilians, to kill everyone they meet, to null out all the civilians who are of suspicion. It's another testimony to grave war crimes. They have no statute of limitation. During the Ukrainian army shootings, more than 800 civilians were evacuated, and many people have already provided their testimonies on the crimes of occupation regimes, shootings, torture of civilians, plundering, and violence. As of now, 596 Russian servicemen have returned home who have been prisoners of war. They are treated by psychologists and doctors and work with investigation and testify of a whole network of secret prisons along the line of contact and in parallel with official sites for prisoners of war in Kharkov, Kiev, Kryvyi Rog and other cities. It is a territory of violence, torture, extortion of any evidence used in the interests of Ukrainian special services and blackmail of relatives, plundering and pressure against relatives in order to commit crimes in the interests of the Kiev regime. It has been mentioned in our separate report, but it has not in any way influenced the approach of the Ukrainian side. Those crimes continue, and we do not observe any reaction by international organizations. Only statements that such practices exist by the Kiev regime. International organizations are aware of this. Such practice by responsible international organizations is unacceptable and requires the change in approach. Because they, in words, adhere to international humanitarian law, they make statements about inadmissibility of crimes, atrocities and torture, and they do not react to the facts cited. As the Kiev regime is maintained by its Western sponsors, Ukrainian army formations have continued to strike places frequented by civilians. Major shopping malls were struck and densely populated areas, mainly during weekends, taking into account a large number of crowds and mass victims. They attacked places where there were no military sites and no military contingents. It has caused mass deaths of and wounds of civilian populations. The Ukrainian army attacked with reactive munitions of HIMARS MLRS, the Hercules Молоко shopping center. 2 employees of the shopping center suffered who were preparing the shop for opening. Houses, a pharmacy, social center and cars were damaged, and no military sites were damaged because there were no military sites there. In Novy-Yurkovich settlement in the Bryansk region, Storm Shadow missile actually turned the administrative center into a pile of bricks. There were no military sites there at all, and that is why no military sites were damaged. On the 20th of January, 11 civilians were wounded in Gorlovka. Residential houses, city hospital, and social buildings were attacked. On the 8th of February, Makeyevka was attacked, and 2 women died immediately, and 9 people were wounded. Among the wounded are a 7-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. Hundreds of apartments were ruined, tens of cars, and no military sites. During the last 3 months, the Ukrainian army just grew the use of UAVs in order to attack civilians as well as miners. During this period, 409 civilians suffered, 23 people died, 286 people were wounded, including 24 miners. The Ukrainian army actively used aircraft-type drones to strike civilian sites. The record of the Ukrainian army was the launch at the night of the 11th of March of 337 drones against civilian objects, civilian sites within a radius of up to 1,000 kilometers from the line of contact. Multi-story buildings were damaged, infrastructure sites, and civilian production sites. There were also pinpoint drone strikes against civilian population in frontline territory. The Ukrainian beasts, they just hunted the civilian cars and buses. Buses were mostly attacked in Gorlovka, Donetsk People's Republic, Shebekino, Gravoronsk, Krasnoyarsk regions of the Belgorod region. At route number 2 in Gorlovka, a civilian route shuttle bus was attacked by a drone, with causing casualties among civilians. On the 4th of February, a school bus was attacked in the settlement of Vasilyevka of the Zaporozhye region, and 5 children were wounded who were going to school. Now, cars that are daily burnt on the roads of Belgorod region, Kursk region, Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. We have no doubts that the Ukrainian militants striking with a kamikaze drone against a civilian car. They are aware that women, children are in a car, and sometimes entire families become victims of such strikes. Now, the Ukrainian army ignores international law and attacks with strike drones medical workers, doctors who were performing their duties to save the sick and the wounded. 2 doctors were killed by these strikes. It is a common practice for them to strike the sites of which have previously been shelled. 17 rescuers have become victims of such shootings. 2 of them were killed immediately. Civilian infrastructure has been attacked by Ukrainian militants, and 25 utility workers were suffered, and 1 of them was killed immediately. It is military crimes striking civilian population, and they take measures to deprive the wounded people even a chance to be saved and to receive aid. It's a policy of beasts who have forgotten any human principles and norms. For this period, Ukraine also committed a very important crime. With nearly total lack of trust between the parties to the conflict, it has completely derailed the agreement with the US, a 30-day moratorium on strikes against energy facilities. As Ukraine has made 144 strikes against energy facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation. During this period, Kyiv has nearly not changed its tactics of striking civilian infrastructure and has made several blatantly demonstrative strikes on major energy facilities that have demonstrated the desire of Kyiv to ignore the agreements on any restrictions to military hostilities.
The Suja gas measuring station was bluntly struck. About 50 transformer substations were damaged by shelling, including the Troyskaya power substation in the LNR, which provided electricity to more than 36,000 subscribers, and the Vinogradovo power substation, which supplied electricity to 56,000 civilian subscribers. As a result of such strikes, about 200,000 subscribers were left without power supply for different periods of time. Another appalling fact: during the first quarter of this year. This is criminal activities to convert the real situation in the front regions and killing, including the desire to simply knock out war correspondent journalists and media personnel. During this period, under various conditions, 13 mass media workers have suffered. 6 of them will never return from their editorial assignment. The number exceeds more as compared with the previous year. The fact of the deliberate killing of 3 journalists in the village of Mikhailovka using a precision HIMARS MLRR rocket is more than eloquent proof of the Kiev regime insane fear to spreading the truth, which makes available a real assessment of the Kiev's regime actions in the war zone. That is why they are so afraid of the Russian journalists covering the events in these zones. Taking into account the fact that Ukrainian forces in the overwhelming majority commit war crimes in the constitutional territories of the Russian Federation, Russian investigative and law enforcement agencies records investigate and bring to court criminal cases against Ukrainian who commit crimes against the civilian population of Russia. For the period of 1st January to 31 March of this year, 422 criminal cases were initiated on the fact of shelling of Russian civilian objects. During the same period, the investigation of 41 criminal cases were completed and the materials on which were sent to the prosecutor office for further transfer to the courts. During the period of hostilities, Russian courts have already passed guilty verdicts in 397 criminal cases against 536 Ukrainian servicemen and mercenaries. In conclusion, I would like to highlight several definitions that characterize the current state and criminal activities of the Kiev regime with regard to the civil population and violation of norms of international human laws. The permission and guidelines for the violation of norms of human laws and principles by the Ukrainian militants came from the political leadership of Ukraine and are not disputed by the masters and sponsors. The co-organizers, states and sponsors of the Kiev regime are making blatant attempts to block any proposals to conduct international investigations into the crimes committed by Ukrainian formations. We state this all the time. Kiev is not at all squeamish and actively uses the practice of staged crimes on its territory, killing and maiming its own citizens to broadcast to Western audiences the necessary bloody picture, attributing it to the actions of Russia and Russian military. Today we are witnessing a dangerous trend that in the context of attempts by the United States and Russia to find options for a peaceful settlement of the situation, the danger of provocations by the Ukrainian side is only growing. At the same time, as practice shows, Kiev is prone to organizing such provocations on its own territory with the death and injury of its own people, and in conditions where independent investigation of this incident is virtually impossible. I just stated the major conclusions which are contained in our report for the first quarter of this year. I think it will be soon published in the media resources of the Foreign Ministry and would be available in print version in Russian and English languages. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Rodion Valerievich. Yes, we are going to post this report on the website of our ministry and image information sources related to the ministry. So now we are coming to the question. Portal Ukraine.ru. Yes, thank you very much. It is very important for our publication and our readers. The question is there a possibility that the Russian justice system will organize a trial against a representative of the criminal Kiev regime in the likeness of Nuremberg, which could be considered as showcase and thereby achieve a vivid propaganda effect aimed at our society and the Western audiences? Thank you very much for your question. Indeed, we raised this question all the time, not in the territory of Russia, but in other countries, because the need for prosecution of those committed the crimes against humanitarian laws against civilians is quite relevant, as always. But let's look back at the history, legal history, in order to understand what is happening now, proceeding from the practice which was relevant during the Second World War. The decision on Nuremberg trial was made after the defeat of the Nazi regime. This is a political decision where to hold this trial and in what form. I just mentioned in my report that investigative and law enforcement agencies of Russia are conducting investigation into the crimes committed by the Ukrainian forces. As of today, more than 500 military servicemen of Ukraine are sentenced to big criminal cases. Now we are investigating into the shelling cases, crimes in Kursk region, in the liberated Donetsk and Lugansk regions, where our military passes meter by meter. They identify the witnesses about and evidence about the crimes of Ukrainian forces. And of course, we will discuss it at the level of legal prosecution. I believe that decision on these trials is not of course will be made, and the victims of these crimes would be satisfied in terms of the prosecution and punishment of those committed these crimes. Now we are collecting, recording these crimes and preparing the evidence fair framework and basis. I believe that we will have a possibility to inform all the countries interested in that about the crimes committed by the Ukrainian regime. Now we portion by portion are trying to demonstrate these crimes using special reports, which are practically available to all international organizations. We're sending this information to these organizations, and we reporting them to those organizations that are honestly doing their business. All the rest depends on the political will and the agreement in terms of punishment of those who infringed upon the human laws. I believe not only Russia but other countries that following the events in Ukraine are interested in that in order to avoid impunity of those who committed these crimes. Tavria, radio and TV company. Good morning. Do you receive information about unlawful actions from the territories occupied by Ukrainian armed forces, in particular from the right bank of the Kherson regions? Do you have the statistics? How many such cases have been reported? I understand the geographical location because you, as a Kherson mass media, you are concerned about what is happening in the occupied territories. Yes, we receive reports from the people from the other bank. We receive their evidence from them. This is out of court crimes executions, sexual harassment, and sexual crimes. We have a whole database on that, but as I mentioned in my report, this data which should be confirmed, verified, and then they would be included in our statistics and database, which because we need to be sure that in the correctness of these databases, we cannot base ourselves as Ukrainian side is doing or Western separate international organizations are doing. They just pick up this data out of the blue without any evidence. That is why everything is what is presented in our report is based on the real facts and evidence, and the same is true for the information from Kherson region. We have evidence, we have reports which are verified by the law enforcement authorities, and we based ourselves on this data. I'm pretty much sure that soon we will get additional data on what is happening in your region, which we are concerned about, especially the great number of shellings against Alyoshka, Nuke, Kharkovka, located in your territories, and which is published in your mass media, and we are thankful for that. Thank you very much. Moscow Post. You have answered your question to one of our question. So I just would like to ask your assessment regarding the activities of biolaboratories, which is discussed in the dialogue with the US, and what are the current assessment of biological threats to Russia. These discussions are focusing on substantial matters, issues, in order to find the mutually acceptable solutions. That is why I would suggest not to discuss the hearsay around this process. The violation of the humanitarian law, using, in particular, using the use of prohibited ways of warfare, like biolaboratories, chemical laboratories. All this information is sent to the international respective organizations, and all these elements are of US produced, and they are also sent to the US side. But we intend to actively search those committed in these crimes. Second question: how many criminal cases are open for crimes by Ukrainian forces in Kursk region in 2025? What is the nature of the charges? I just would like to explain that criminal cases could refer to the crimes that are committed by hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers, and they can refer to the crimes which are not only committed in the Kursk region. We just receiving this information from Investigative Committee of Russia, and about 41 cases are opened, but more than 200 cases are open against shelling or violence against civilian infrastructure where civilians live. So these figures are not demonstrative, illustrative. The process of investigation has just only started. It is delayed by the demining processes and strikes by the Ukrainian side. So the entire investigation is not fully started, is not fully launched. Once the security and safety issues are solved, then this data would be fuller. And these figures are not illustrative. We have intention on part of investigative authorities to make public the facts about all crimes committed in the crime region over these 240 days, which was under control of Ukrainian forces. The story is about hundreds and hundreds crimes. Thank you very much. Colleagues, any further questions? Международный Life журнал. We have a question. Ukrainian forces deliberately destroyed a monastery in Gorlevsk. What is the reason for such an aggressive actions by Ukrainian forces? You raised the whole level of issues, and the burning down of the Gornalsk monastery is just one of the many other crimes. This is destruction of the Orthodox religion along the lines in many regions, and effects of humiliation of Ukrainian Orthodox Church in the territory of Ukraine. So this evidence demonstrates the will of Ukrainian regime to cut the roots of Orthodox which link the Ukrainians for self-identity of these people. So it provokes hysteria of the Ukrainian regime, who just ready to serve the interest of other sponsors. This is just the fight against the Orthodox Church, which unites these people. So Gornalsk monastery is a part of this process. I believe we will devote one of the reports to this incidents and facts and the crimes against Orthodox believers, and this problem is quite big, and this is the direct evidence of the actions of the Kiev regime, which is demonstrated by a lot of evidence, and that would require separate investigations like humiliation and butchering of the believers, Orthodox believers. Голос Отечества. Good afternoon. I have a question. We have agreed about the truce with the United States, but it was brought by the military rockets, which, as the president said, are controlled by the US side. It means that from one side, the United States are going to agree with us on the truce, and on the other hand, they are claiming and using these missiles. Why it is happening, and when we start speaking, saying the truth that in fact we are fighting against the United States in the territory of Ukraine. I don't see any new narrative in what you were saying in your question. We always have said that the United States is co-organizers of what is happening in the territory of Ukraine. Now they are trying to build a dialogue with Russia and trying to suggest options of peaceful settlement. There is no any secrecy or secret mechanism here. Regarding your statement on the use of the US-made missile, I don't have this confirmation regarding the type of the missiles that were used. We recorded the intensification of the use of the rocket missiles of the HIMARS rocket systems against our journalists, social infrastructure, and against a number of other important objects. That is the evidence of the fact that Ukraine is trying to use more actively the weapons which could be blocked remotely by the United States. That is why they are trying to use it as much as possible regarding those HIMARS rockets and probably other systems.
And maybe, according to our data, it's a key that can block them by the Ukrainian side, block their use by the Ukrainian side. So the data provided by the American side, I do not have such information. Unfortunately, maybe it's separate headquarters that have been mentioned on numerous occasions also in Western media, in its publications, like the use of British, French long-range missiles. There have been such cases, and we mentioned them in our report. Their position cannot be qualified as seeking peace. They take measures to intensify hostilities and to disrupt, to derail the agreements. Yes, I agree, but they're all guided by the United States of America, Europe, and Ukraine. According to your scope, it's recording the crimes of the Kiev regime. So, the crimes by the United States of America and NATO, they do not include your scope, yes, because the US has committed for many years crimes against different countries and peoples, organizing genocide, trading people, organs, developing inhumane weapons, conducting inhumane experiments on people. Now it's even conducted on our territory, on the territory of the Soviet Union, and Russian governing elites. They just imitate that it's some Kiev regime, that it's acting separately here. What's the reason of such blindness of Russian elites? Honestly, I would not welcome such rhetorics, such statements that are actually not confirmed by exact arguments. We are holding this briefing today in order to convey to you the facts that have been checked, they have been verified, can be used in your work, and it's not about the conclusions you have made in your question, in the wording of your question, but accusations. You just need to provide some exact, some verified arguments, and our position would be more balanced, it would be better proved on the national platforms, because we often face aggressive position of different states in such position as why are you wasting our time? We do not want to know about that, but we insist that it's violation of international humanitarian law. Facts and proof will be presented to any state open for that, whose eyes and ears are open. So I call upon proved statements, even for those who have negative attitude towards our policy. Thank you. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, thank you very much for participating in today's briefing, asking your questions. In conclusion, maybe some words, Mr. Miroshnik. I am grateful for your participation, for your interest, and we very much hope that the report we have published today will be estimated, and the materials in that will be used by you and our diplomatic corps, our delegations to various international organizations. They will receive this data, and we will work further in order to convey to you the officially confirmed data on crimes by the Kiev regime that under our pressure will be considered. will be considered by international community on international platforms. Thank you for supporting our activities.